I've been meaning to do this video for a while. It's the making of the 2020 toolmaking competition video. There's a link below if you haven't seen it yet. In doing that video I learnt a lot in terms of lighting, audio, sound, general videography, and I'm going to share some of that with you today. The opening shot broadly covers most of the topics we'll look at, so let's have a look at that. So it's a simple shot but it feels cinematic. Now let's start breaking it down. Let's remove the music. Now it's lost some of the feel, but it still feels kind of cinematic. I'll go into more depth on colour grading, but I'll take that out now. The scene isn't as vibrant and warm anymore, but it still looks alright. Now, let's stop the camera movement. So without the camera pan, you can really notice the difference. And this shot feels really static and fairly bland. So movement seems to be the key to making a cinematic feeling shot. I had intentions to make a camera slider in the lead up to the toolmaking competition, but I ran out of time. And I still haven't gotten around to it. All of the camera work was done in post-production. So to do this digital camera panning, you have to zoom into the shot, and this gives you extra room around the edges to play with. And then you can pan the camera however you want. You don't want to go overboard with the zoom because then you lose quality. Now one of the key things you've got to do with this technique is to follow the direction of the action. Otherwise it looks wrong. From one scene to the next, you always want the motion moving in the same direction. Some of those shots were actually the other way around. I flipped it in post. And it's a bit disorientating and confusing for the viewer. So you want to try and keep that motion going the same way. To pull off a lot of these shots, it wasn't one take. I did a lot of these things over and over again to get the shot that I really wanted. So it was quite time consuming for 1 second of footage, but I think it was worth it in the end. There's an old wrecked car just outside my shed. That was the perfect object to set the tone for the post-apocalyptic theme. So this car's been sitting there for so long. If you look at these seats, they're pretty decrepit. And for the reaching into the glove box scene, I actually had to put a board down so I could kneel on the seat. Otherwise I was going to fall through it because it was completely destroyed. Let's have more of a look at lighting. Let's go back to the opening shot.
It's not all natural light, I've also got a key light.
So for most of the shots I use these really cheap softbox lights. They're like 20 bucks for the pair or something stupid. They've got to be plugged into the wall and it's a bit of a pain, but it certainly does the job. I wanted a really dramatic light, so I had the key light positioned off to one side of my face. I had a bit of fill light so the other side of my face wasn't complete shadow. And the way I've got my face divided, it's divided right down the middle. And this is called split lighting. And this provides a really dramatic, contrasty look. And I also got a bit of rim light, which adds a bit of background separation, which is quite nice. You could use colours as well. I've experimented using video lights in the past to provide a bit of background separation. This is just to provide a bit of contrast and draw your focus where I want it. Around my mill I haven't got a lot of room, so I'm actually bouncing the softbox off a wall in order to provide illumination. And this is a really great technique. My shed's got a reflective silver foil on the roof, so I can bounce the light off that and provide a nice ambient light when I want to. The early morning shots, of course, everything's orange from the sunrise, but when I'm inside my shed, I still wanted a bit of orange to tie that shot into the previous shot. So I've got some video lights that I've sort of borrowed from people. I can change this from a warm orange colour, and I can change it to a much cooler colour if I want. And for the nighttime shots, I use blue for moonlight. We'll talk more on the nighttime shots in a bit. To try and get more of the morning light look, I did a bit of colour grading. It's not something I do too heavily. You can get okay looks if you don't overdo it and learn how to control it. I'm certainly no expert, but the morning light doesn't last as long as you think. So for some of the shots I lost the light. Colour grading helped me just tweak the colours a bit and push a bit more orange into the shot, which feels like more of a post-apocalyptic colour to me anyway. But then I did things like desaturated the grass. I made the grass less colourful and pushed a bit of yellow into it so the grass is a little bit more dead rather than vibrant green. And I think this just helps with the post-apocalyptic look. And last thing on colour grading, throughout the entire video I had just a gentle, slightly warm in the early shots to a slightly cooler tweak in the lead up to the nighttime shots. So this was kind of the progression from morning all the way through to night. So speaking of night, there's a lot of stuff I do for the nighttime scenes, so let's talk about those. The opening lead into the lights out sequence went something like this. So I initially filmed it with extra light so the scene was very bright so that the change was much more apparent. So to do this shot I manually turned off the light, turned on my little video light which has a flickering mode, and then acted out that the lights went out. There's a couple of shots of pure blackness in the middle that cut off the lit scene and the flickering light scene. If we look at it without that, you can see there's an obvious jump cut. So at one moment I'm here, and the next shot I'm over here. So by having a black frame in the middle of that, it's not as apparent that there's a cut from one sequence to another. For the nighttime shots going through the door, I've got a bit creative with the camera angle. I initially have a camera shot down low looking up at me, so I'm in a position of power, I'm wielding my weapon. I wanted this sense of confidence dropping as I'm progressing into the room. And I'm deliberately putting myself in compromising positions, having the camera looming over me, and then it just turns into the camera's towering over you. When the lights first go off, I hear a sound and approach the door to go into the next area of my shed. This is deliberately drawn out to build a bit of tension and apprehension as to what's going to happen next. There's a bit of a rule in filmmaking, the 180-degree shutter rule. So filming at 25 frames per second, normally you'd film with the shutter open for a 50th of a second. So for each frame of footage, the shutter's only open for half of that time. I had to open 100% of that time, just so I could get double the amount of light. And that means I get a less grainy shot. So I've got our two lights, about to do the shoot. So most cameras have the ability to interface with your phone. I framed this composition so we're on the rule of thirds. The door forms a very small window into this lit world, and everything else is darkness. You're going into the darkness. You don't know what's beyond. This shot will be filmed with the lights off, of course. So the idea is I walk through the doorway, shine the torch on the door, pan across, past the camera, and we'll get a nice flash of lens flare. Also for illumination on my face, I've gone hack filmmaker and just use go press stop recording. Sorry, I'm backlit, I know. So the setup I've got outside, I've got this light. I've now got it set to a cooler colour. The idea is it's moonlight. The door is currently foggy, which is perfect, so it really highlights that this door is left open. With this shot, I'm going to be using a torch, and I'm going to pan across quickly. So you've got the moonlight out there. That means I've set this board up so you can't actually set a light there, and then we'll see the open door. So the idea of this shot is I walk past my plasma cutting grate, someone's hiding behind the grate, and I light it up with these really cool lighting effects. I did a lot of experimentation in getting these lighting effects on the grate, and I found the best way was to fully walk past the grate and shine the torch directly at the grate the whole time, and this just gave the best shadow and just a really cool shot. So to try and pull off the scavenger shots, I did everything I could to make it not look like it was me. Very quick shots, glasses off, different change of clothes. I've also had a haircut. With the quick shots, hopefully it looks like someone else. I've got a limited cast. Okay, so for the scavenger run out the door sequence, so what I had, camera mounted here, I've got a torch. That beam of light shines right at the door and the back of my head as I run out the door, just to provide a bit more light for that sequence, because once I go out that door, you start to lose a bit of light. I've got my moonlight set up, and for a little bit of ambience, I've just got a little magnetic light up there, just to give it a bit more, otherwise it's too dark. For this outside shot here, I'm under the blue moonlight, so I just tweak the skin tones a bit, just add a bit more warmth back into the shot. Otherwise it looked really lifeless. Which brings us to our deleted scene. Scavenger. Oh, that looks creepy. One of the original ideas for this was COVID zombies. So everyone, the virus turns into a zombie, and in the end I deleted it. I felt it was a bit much. Just had the scavenger and now I've got a zombie. It felt a bit much, so I just took it out. But it was a lot of fun. Okay, we are zoomed in more. GoPro stop recording. That's the end of the zombie sequence. So then I had to reconfigure my lights for the closing hero shot. The closing shot here is actually in half speed, and this was because I felt the original shot was a little bit too quick and it just didn't feel dramatic enough. Because I've slowed down the footage, it has this slow, stuttery look. I kind of like it because it's kind of a stylized closing to this sequence. So I kept it in and didn't reshoot it. So let's now discuss sound design. Sound is arguably the most important thing in a video, or at least not having bad sound. Let's do a bit of an experiment. So if we have bad picture quality, look, it's not great, but you can still find this watchable. But now, if I've got bad audio and I've got fantastic picture, this isn't really something you're going to want to watch for very long. Bad audio is the #1 switch off. Priorities when it comes to video, I'd say, is get reasonable audio, then get reasonable picture, then start looking at good picture and good sound. And of course, story and good content trumps all of that as well. And you can get pretty cheap little lav mics, and these will work absolutely fine. Let's talk about the sound design in this video. I think I got that sound, I got that out of the YouTube audio library, and I used that in the lead up to opening the door, and I could have kept it going, but I actually switched the sound to a completely different sound effect for a different environment. This just to separate it, we're now in a different room, different environment, different sound. I had 4 or 5 sounds stacked up in order to make this sequence work. So all my microphones are mono, they don't have a left and right channel, but for some of the shots where I have got movement from left to right, I chose to pan the audio from one side to the other. Watching this video, you will only really get the benefit if you're wearing headphones. Hey, it's a nice touch sometimes. So I had some really terrible audio in places. When I was assembling the brooch, it was raining really hard. I managed to make it sound more like this. So Foley art is a process where people get things and make little sounds.
Thanks, Randy Richard.
I'm not expecting this video to do very well. Hey, for the few of you that are still watching, I hope you learned something, and yeah, thanks for watching.